Recite Hebrew by Michelle Geft. And today I am reviewing Read, Write, Recite Hebrew by Michelle Geft. This is a book that teaches how to read and write the Hebrew alef-bet in cursive and in block letters, which is really something very different. Most books teach one or the other. They don't normally teach both at the same time. So this book can be used by adult learners who are at the very beginning of their Hebrew journey, who do not have a teacher. A teacher is not required because she basically gives all of the information that one needs to understand the pronunciation and how to read and recognize and write the letters. So I'm going to give this book a 0 on the religiosity meter. It does teach some words, and I looked through it and I did not see any religious words at all. They were all just your basic, everyday, kind of common-ish words. So if you're a secular family, this book should not give you any problems. One thing I love about it is that she gives like a variety of fonts. One's missing right there. So she actually shows each letter in quite a few, maybe 5 or 6 different fonts, which is awesome because that is one thing that really gives students problems, is when they see a word in a new font that they've never seen, and maybe something looks weird or different and they can't figure out what the letter is. So using different fonts really helps the learner identify what is important and what is not. And of course there is cursive in the book because she's teaching the cursive. But what is also great is that she doesn't just teach the cursive form of every letter once and then move on. She actually lets students practice reading the cursive, which is, a big plus to this book. I cannot for the life of me remember where I found this book, but I know it was somewhere here in the States, and if you look on the screen, hopefully you'll see a few websites where I found it that it's available at. Before using this book, the student really does not need to know anything except for the fact that it starts on the opposite side, right? If a normal book would start on this side, and hopefully they will recognize that the book starts on this side because this looks like a cover. So basically the book goes through the alef-bet, and it teaches each letter one at a time in alef-bet order. And again, so here we are somewhat in the middle of the alef-bet, and this is the letter lamed. So up at the top, she introduces the name of the letter. This one is lamed. She tells you it's the 12th letter. I mean, that's not that important. And it says lamed says L as in love. Okay, so we know what sound it makes, and it represents the number 30. So the letters in Hebrew, of course, do all represent a number. Every single letter represents a number. I'm really not convinced that that's actually important when you're just learning how to write the letters and recognize them, but she thought it was, so that's fine. There's no harm in actually learning it. Then what really stands out on the page is these 5 different you know you're not writing it from the wrong direction. And then she gives you a little bit more information on the pronunciation of the name of the letter, lamed, right? Instead of, you might, especially with an ed at the end in English, an English speaker might look at that and go, what is this, lamed? Right? We're not quite sure how to pronounce everything. And then she gives you a couple of words that start with the new letter and use other words and vowels that you have already learned. And then she gives you a little place to practice your writing, of your new letter. Right, you're practicing writing those 4 words that you've just learned using your new letter and all of the previously learned letters. Now you can see here that I had my son write in cursive only, and that's only because he already knew, he was working on his cursive writing. He already knew how to write all of the letters in block form. And this is part of the reason why I don't think this book is really suitable for children, is that it teaches both versions of the letter at the same time. And that's not really how you teach children. You basically teach them the block letters only so that they can practice writing them as they're getting used to the shape of the printed letter. And then only once they've gone through the entire alef-bet and they're good with recognizing those letters and they don't ever mix any up, only then do you introduce them to cursive, because so many of the cursive letters look super, super different from the way the block letters look. So you don't want to introduce cursive and block to a child at the same time. It's only going to confuse them. Then over here on the next page, you can see actually way up top here, it shows you how far along in the alef-bet you are. So you can see lamed is about halfway through. And then she gives for every single letter, she gives some recognition practice. So she has you looking for your new letters so that you can really get practice looking for it and recognizing it. And you can see this particular letter search doesn't only look for lamed, she's also asking about some older letters, yod and chet, so that you don't forget, the letters. I like this. She doesn't make you, she doesn't just teach something once and then you're done with it. She keeps going back to the letters that you've already learned and stuff you've already learned so that you get the practice. And then down below here, look at this. We've got practice reading. We've got 2 lines that use the print letters, and then we've got 1 line where it's written in cursive, which is really great because she's giving constant practice of reading in cursive. Because if you read a book or a newspaper, it's always going to be the block form, doesn't mean that's all you're ever going to read. You might read a handwritten note. You might read something that your teacher writes on the board. You really have to know both sets of letters. And so she constantly gives practice reading both sets of letters. And that's not something that you see very often. And then at the very bottom of this page, she's asking us to write these words in cursive. So again, more practice switching between the block letters and the cursive letters. And then the next page, sometimes there's a couple of pages per letter, and sometimes there's just 1 double page spread per letter. So at the end of the book, she gives a little bit more information about the writing system. So for example, on this page, she shows how to j, and a gimel with a geresh is going to sound like a j, and a tzadi with a geresh is going to sound like a typical English sounding ch. We also get an explanation of the numerical system with respect to the letters, and also a short list of some common words. I mean, this list is super short. You're not going to get very far with it. And then there's a couple of conversations to get, to help the student get a little bit of a sense of word structure, sentence structure in Hebrew, and get a little practice reading. And then at the very end, there's some reference pages. You've got a couple of pages dedicated to the sounds of the vowels. You've got a page dedicated to the letters that have two different sounds, like bet and vet, and also the letters that have a final form, so that, it's two different forms, but just one sound. And then a couple more pages of practice. So all in all, I love this book for beginning learners who are just getting used to the alef-bet. I love that it teaches both forms. This is perfect for adults because in general, if you're an adult and you don't know how to write in cursive, whenever you write, you're gonna look like a little kid. Only little kids or very, very beginners write in block letters. And so it's just, I know it's very, very different from in the United States, or I think anywhere where English or the Latin alphabet is used. It's not so common anymore for people to write in cursive. We consider it to be sometimes very difficult to read, and I know that there's like a whole generation that didn't learn how to write cursive, and so they can't read anything that's written in cursive either. But Hebrew is not like that at all. The block alphabet is really slow to be written. It's, everything is straight lines, and it's just really hard to write. The cursive letters are just so much easier to write, and since that's what everybody uses, if you don't know the cursive alef-bet, you are really gonna be in bad shape when somebody ends up writing you a note, or even like signs that are posted on a wall somewhere, they could also be written in cursive. So you're really at a disadvantage if you don't know it. I love that this book gives constant reinforcement of the cursive letters. I love that that all of the activities involve searching for the print letters and the cursive letters. I love that they do them together because in an adult mind, it solidifies it earlier that these are just two different forms of a single letter, right? Just like a capital A and a small a, they don't really look alike, but we know that they're both an A. We don't think of them as anything different than two different ways of writing an A. And the same thing with these letters. The faster you recognize both versions of an aleph as an aleph, the better off you're going to be. So I love that she gives so much practice with that. I also love that she gives the starting point for how to write the letters and like which direction to go, because especially because these students probably don't have a teacher, it can be a little confusing. You think, well, should I be starting here? Should I be making this letter with one stroke or two? And if it's two, which one do I start with? And so it's really good that she shows where to start with each letter. And those two things that I don't really like so much about this book, the one is that there isn't good. So you can tell when the letter dips below the bottom line. But it's hard to tell if a letter extends above the top line or if it's just smaller. And I can see a lot of people who have learned the letters without a teacher. They very often make certain letters really small, like way too small, because they're trying to get the whole letter to fit in the letter space, when in reality it should be extending way above the top line, but they had nobody to teach them that. So this book also doesn't teach that. It doesn't show where the top line should be, and so that if the student doesn't have any feedback from somebody who knows, they might be making their letters wrong. And the other thing is that she for some reason, her preferred version of the cursive faceofeet is this one, which is not a faceofeet that anybody ever uses. I've only ever seen this faceofeet used once in the wild, and it wasn't even in a Hebrew letter, it was in a Yiddish letter. I showed it to one of my consultants who was born in 1990, and he looked at that letter and he did not even know what it was. So this letter, if the students get the impression that this is one of the appropriate versions to write the faceofeet, they're going to be at a disadvantage because that letter is incomprehensible to young Israelis. She does show over here that there's another version of faceofeet, and this is the one that everybody learns. But this should be the only one. She shouldn't have this other option. But besides that, besides those two things, I really like the book. If you are a brand new beginner and you're looking for a book that will help you get some practice reading and writing the alef-bet in block and in cursive, I highly recommend this book because it teaches them both, and it gives all kinds of really good practice and good information about all of the letters. So that's it for today. That's Read, Write, Recite Hebrew by Michelle Geft. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. And if you have a book you'd like me